The thunder of the 9 heavens rings from me. The light of lightning comes from me. The majestic cannon rolls in the wind and sand, iron galls and steel bars protect our China. October 1949. The artillery fire on Kinmen Beach gradually fades away. The sea water has been dyed red with blood. And those soldiers who were supposed to have shining red stars, but scurrying around like a headless fly. In the end, almost all of them became prisoners. What I bring to you today is a big win in fractions of a share. This one was during the civil war between the Kuomintang and the Communist Party. The CCP's first strategic failure. The 3 groups that landed on the island. Nearly tens of thousands of soldiers were almost wiped out. Battle results. It has had a profound historical impact on both sides of the Taiwan Strait. For convenience, hereafter I will refer to the 2 warring parties as the National Army and the Communist Army. In October 1949, for the CCP, the overall situation of the world was decided. The red sun has risen over Tiananmen Tower. After crossing the river, the Communist Army became even more powerful. Conquer Shanghai and capture Wuhan. Soon the ice was pushed to the southeast coast. More than 30,000 remnants of Tang Enbo's National Army retreated to Xiamen. Originally planned to resist the sea and fight the enemy in a last-ditch battle. But he only resisted for 3 days before being captured. For the small Kinmen, it is even more inevitable. Kinmen Main Island has a total of 13 islands. Among them, Greater Kinmen Island as the main island. Only 10 kilometers away from Xiamen. The island is 20 kilometers long and 14 kilometers wide. Area is about 150 square kilometers. The topography of the island is that the mountains in the east are high and the coast is steep, making it difficult to climb. The west is flatter. Especially the Guningtou area in the northwest corner. Yellow and white sand beach. Not many rocks. It is an ideal location for large-scale amphibious landings. Therefore, the National Army defenders built additional field offensives at the landing area. Obstacles laid. But due to time constraints, it was not possible to achieve comprehensive fortressization. Big or small entrance. All of the original Li Lianglong 22nd Regiment, the 201st Division of the Youth Army, and the 118th Division of the 12th Corps defended. About 20,000 people in total. After Xiamen Island was lost, Jiang, Jieshi successively moved the 18th Army of Hulian's 12th Corps. 19th Army marches to defend Kinmen. Since before the war started, the total strength of the Kinmen garrison has reached more than 40,000 people. Although there are many Blue Army numbers, most of them are incomplete. Poor combat effectiveness. The only tank unit on the island. 1st Battalion, 3rd Tank Regiment. Only 2 tank companies. A mere 21 tanks. And at that time, the National Army Command City judged Shaojinmen, the closest city to Xiamen, most likely to be attacked first. Therefore, 20,000 troops were stationed. Troops capable of direct combat in the northwest of Greater Kinmen Island. Only about 10,000 people. On the communist side, its original battle plan was to shock and capture. However, due to the serious shortage of ships, it can only be changed to first in last. This objectively gives the National Army slightly adjust the deployment time and specific combat tasks. Naturally it fell at that time. Is heading south with a devastating force. Yi Fei's head. Yi Fei is one of the founding generals of the Chinese People's Liberation Army. He is also the only senior general who has returned from overseas. He was born to an overseas Chinese in Luzon Island, Philippines. Merchant family. Hence his Filipino name. Called Histo Diongo. After capturing Xiamen on October 15, Ye Fei decided to use one unit each from the 28th and 29th Armies. A total of 6 regiments of troops. The person responsible for capturing Golden Gate. The attack is divided into 2 echelons. The first echelon consists of the 24th Regiment, the 2nd 51st Regiment and the 2nd 53rd Regiment. Scheduled for early morning on the 20th. Landed in Guningtou and Guningtou areas. Then the troops were divided into 3 groups. Among them, the 24th Regiment responsible for the east. €3 to quickly capture Shuangru Mountain. Cut the dumbbell-shaped large Kinmen Island in half. Prevent National Army reinforcements from the east. The 251st Regiment and the 253rd Regiment went straight to Kinmen County. Among them, the 253rd Regiment served as the main attack. After capturing the county seat, the second echelon should have arrived. Then you can concentrate your superior forces. Encircle and annihilate the National Army in the east of Kinmen. To sum it up, it's 24 domineering words. Fire suppression, multiple landing points, rapid tearing. Flowers bloom on all sides, blocking shots and defeating them all. The entire combat operation is expected to end within 3 days. See it from the perspective of others. An amphibious landing operation involving tens of thousands of people. It only takes 3 days. Maybe a little too optimistic. But for Ye Fei, who is in charge of the overall situation, 3 days may be enough to give face to the National Army. His 10th Corps moved south from Shanghai in August. In just 2 months, they captured Pingtan Island in Fuzhou and other places. Plus what I said before. The Battle of Xiamen also ended in 3 days. Therefore, for the high-spirited Ye Fei's wings, as long as you can land on the beach, the enemy is bound to be dispatched at the first touch. Our army only needs armed marches. Just accept surrendered troops and equipment. Therefore, the soldiers who landed only carried 1 day's worth of weapons. As an assist, the 251st Regiment brought nothing. Getting ready to have lunch in Kinmen County. There are also some ships. It was even installed on the leader's office desk and chairs. For the use of the new regime. But this ambitious plan has not yet begun. I encountered an old problem. Severe shortage of ships. Because when the National Army retreated, most of the ships along the coast have been destroyed. Ships collected by the 28th Army can only carry 1 battalion of troops. So it had to change the time of attack. Postponed from 20th to 24th. On the one hand, the 10th Corps headquarters urged them to prepare for additional troops. On the one hand, it requires the concentration of all ships of each army. Fight with support attack. If you have a boat, there will be people who can sail it. Therefore, various places in Fujian have to recruit boatmen with huge sums of money. The big deal here is literal consciousness. It is said that the maximum price per person is 3 taels of gold plus opium. It's just these few days. The garrison strength on the island has quietly changed. The aforementioned Hulian 12th Corps. Shipping starts from Shantou, Chaoju. Already arriving on the 21st. Da Kinmen. But Ye Fei Swobu was full of confidence and did not pay attention to it. Therefore, the offensive continues as usual. Around 8 p.m. on the 24th. More than 9,000 officers and soldiers of the Communist Party of China boarded 300 warships. The troops were divided into 3 groups and headed towards Kinmen Island under the cover of night. Here, If everyone does a simple division 9,000, 300, the answer may be 30 people per boat. But in fact it's not that simple. Because it is a civilian ship temporarily recruited. The size and performance of the ships in the fleet vary greatly. The difference is that there is a large tidal sailing ship of about 20 tons. When the deck is covered with sandbags and bunkers, it can still carry half the troops of the regiment. However, many small fan panels can only carry one class. Even some bamboo rafts. It's basically a bundle of bamboo tubes, with a machine gun mounted on it. Relying on the ability of paddling in groups of 3. What a small coincidence. The boat will sail soon. A northeasterly wind of level 3 or 4 was blowing from the sea. And most of the boatmen on the wall are from Fuzhou, Quanzhou and other places. Not very familiar with the waterways near Kinmen. Eventually, the fleets lost contact with each other. They can only sail towards their goals. Just like this, the attacking fleet is on this narrow strait. It took 4 or 5 hours of hard work. Most of the soldiers on board came from the heart of the troubled waters in the north. In a bumpy boat, I almost vomited out my internal organs. This is to a large extent affects the subsequent combat effectiveness. Amphibious landings and unparalleled land operations. Very demanding on time formation and coordination. In Normandy 5 years ago. Even if the Allies have overwhelming superiority. But he still planned for DD for half a year. On the other hand, the Communist Army was obviously prepared hastily for this matter. Let's try it before fighting. However, the Communist Army was not entirely without advantages. October 24th to 25th. It is the day with the highest tide in Kinmen all year long. The giant horse and barbed wire fence set up by the National Army on the beach. Almost flooded. Half of it saves a lot of engineering work. 2 o'clock. Youth Army 2014 soldiers on the front line. Found some dark shadows on the sea, begging to be ferried ashore. Then he immediately fired a warning shot. Enemy troops seen in 2014. It is the Vanguard Commando team of the 24th Attack Army Regiment. Communist warships have been discovered. Then the artillery from the rear was called to suppress the national troops on the shore. With the firelight lighting up the night sky, the Battle of Guningtou officially begins. Although he was able to overcome some defensive attacks due to being in charge of the spoon. But after the main attack group of the Communist Army landed, a high-quality bunker that has been set up by the National Army, nailed on the empty beach. Due to lack of offensive weapons, the soldiers had to be ordered to tie their waist bags, climb to the bunker and die together. A greedy dry land. The waves are rolling in all kinds of vomit and sand. Absorbed the already exhausted footsteps. Therefore, the stalemate lasted for a long time, but failed to break through. However, the number of communist troops was increasing at this time. Maybe I just need to accumulate more strength. Can overwhelm the National Army's defense line. But at this critical moment, I saw a sudden flash of fire in the distance. A force that turns the tide of the war appears. Mentioned earlier. The garrison of Kinmen has added a new chariot unit. That is, the 1st Battalion at the third end of the tank that is not full. The battalion is equipped with only 21 combat vehicles. And even this guy was put together temporarily. Previously, the armored forces of the National Army. Already exhausted in 3 major battles. We have to find a way to rebuild. After World War II. U.S. troops in Guam, Okinawa and other places in the Philippines. Left many tanks. Because the cost of shipping back to the country is too high. And lack of usefulness. Therefore, most of the weapons and communication systems were dismantled. Wait for it to spontaneously ignite and be scrapped. Then, Jian Weiguo, then Chief of Staff of the National Army Armor Design Department. Just negotiate with the US. Buy these abandoned tanks at low prices and ship them to Shanghai. Each rebuilt tank battalion used local materials on its own. Find suitable vehicle parts for refurbishment and assembly. M5 is Toyat. It is a light tank that the US military began to equip in 1942. The whole vehicle weighs 14.7 tons. Frontal armor thickness is only 51 mm. The weapon is only a 37 mm M6 tank gun. Due to above-board performance. In World War II, it was basically only used for reconnaissance. By 1949, it was already lagging behind the times. But when the enemy lacks counterattack nuclear weapons, its advantages of lightness and flexibility are fully utilized. Can move quickly to fill gaps in defense. A 37 mm small water pipe is just too scratchy to deal with armor. With a rate of fire of up to 25 minutes. The egg mark that deals with infantry is a professional counterpart. Chariot. After the third group film arrived in Kinmen, they understood the great responsibility. Therefore, we often conduct joint training exercises with unknown units. October 24. 3 Level 7 tanks from the 1st Company of the 3rd Platoon. Depart from Lianmu. Travel to the coast west of Kinmen to participate in the exercise. The platoon leader is Yang Jan's Hongwei. He is also the commander of tank number 66. The remaining members also include driver Yang Zikuan listed on the market. Co-pilot Xing Shaolin and nuclear gunner Xiong Jingjiu are listed on the market. Acting is at dusk. Tank number 66 broke down near Lonko due to mechanical failure. After all, the requirements for recycling scrapped cars cannot be too high. The emergency repairs failed for a while and the sky gradually darkened again. The company commander ordered. The 3 tanks in the first row remained in place. Continue repairs. Other vehicles and people return faces. The soldiers kept practicing until midnight. Seeing that there is no hope of repairing the number 66 tank, platoon leader Yang Zhon returned to the Alliance to seek help. On the way back, I burned some of the contrast. Prepare to let the whole platoon of soldiers eat before continuing the repairs. Just like this, a row of people in the first couplet are enjoying the sea breeze and eating magical dishes. Suddenly, gunshots were heard from the direction of the beach. Immediately afterwards, 2 flares flew into the sky. This is the Communist Army coming. Signal of guilt. The Youth Army at the forefront at this time 2014. Already at war with the Communist Army. The sky is fresh. Platoon leader Yang Chang understands. Communist artillery fire is likely to come soon. So the soldiers were ordered to immediately put down all activities at hand. Enter the tank and prepare for battle. And will the fault-free number 6065 tank. Deployed to the left and right sides of tank number 66. Form a line facing the beach. To maximize the advantage of firepower. Not long after, part of the Air Force took advantage of the darkness. Touched the back of the 014 defense line. Gradually approaching the location of the chariot plate. The platoon leader immediately ordered gunner Xiong Jingqiu to fire. Want to use artillery fire as observation lighting. Check out the scene ahead in the dark night. Although car number 66 broke down, it did not affect the firing of the artillery. So Xiong Jingqiu stepped on the pedal. An armor-piercing bullet came out with a bang. In fact, we should have replaced high-explosive orders here. But time is tight and I can't take care of that much anymore. But how could one expect this hastily fired artillery shell? It actually hit the mast of an Air Force ammunition ship. Hot shells set fire to the greased sails. The burning sail set off another explosion. Ammunition accumulated on the deck. Plus the resistance of the sea breeze. The fire quickly spread to other sailboats. In an instant, flames spread across the sea. Like a huge flare. After seeing the situation clearly, Yangtze immediately asked the tank guard to fire at full speed. So 3 Stuarts, with its 37mm cannon and vehicle-mounted machine gun, forming a fan-shaped fire network, continuously harvesting enemy heads. Actually, the Communist Army has learned about the National Army's tank troops in advance. News of reinforcements. But they think these iron guys are just defeated soldiers, living without adequate. Therefore, there was no serious preparation for anti-tank operations. Its landing force. It does carry a rocket launcher for tanking. But the rocket launchers at that time were divided into front tube and rear tube and rocket launcher. The third part of the bomb requires the cooperation of 3 people to launch it. Due to disorganization at the time of departure, Xinjiang unified rocket transport by ship. After the bullets landed, the ship was disrupted due to its structure. There is a barrel, but no ammunition again. Or there is ammunition, but no barrel. Ultimately rendering the rocket launcher unusable. Can only be beaten passively. The 24th Regiment of the Communist Army suffered increasing casualties in front of the whirlwind. Had to hide in the parsnips near the beach. But this stupid method has little effect. 2 tanks of the National Army saw the situation. Then they rushed into the secret place of the Communist Army and crushed them like a snake. Although Soot is a fighting chariot. But the 15-ton bucket weighs on people. That's quite substantial, too. In this way, the beach in front of Guningtou gradually became quiet. But in places other than the tank firepower king, the war situation is still very tense. The defense front in 2014 was too wide and the bunker gaps were too large. Eventually, they were broken down one by one. The 3rd Tank Company was put to death. Led all tanks in the 2nd Platoon. And a part of the infantry went to reinforce about the Hiramama area on weekdays. Encounter with the 251st Regiment of the Communist Army advancing inland. A fierce battle broke out between the 2 sides. So the company commander called Yang Zhon. 2 tanks that can still move in the first row are required. Immediately attack in the direction of the west point of the wind, in an attempt to cut off the Communist Army's retreat. After receiving the order, platoon leader Yang changed the left car. Put the broken-down tank number 66 under the command of Yang Zikuan. Gigi personally led the number 64-65 tank into Nanjan in the dark. Soon after departure, the 2014602 Regiment originally responsible for defending the right wing of Guningtou, due to excessive casualties, prepare to abandon the position and retreat to the rear. When passing the broken-down tank number 66, they advised the owners and passengers to evacuate the car together. But the owner of number 66 believes that once the tank is abandoned, will significantly lose firepower output. Therefore, insist on staying behind. In the end, the 602nd Regiment was convinced. Place an unknown force on both sides of the tank. Mutual protection with more than 60 tanks cannot move. The 24th Regiment of the Communist Army dispatched death squads. Intended to use his coquettish moves to get close to him and blast him. Borrowed night. They actually touched the shooting angle of the tank. At this critical moment, The co-pilot Xing Shaolin was injured. Super submachine gun shoots out of the car. Kill the demoman enough. Ensured the safety of comrades. But he himself was shot by 11 bullets and died on the spot. Finally, the lame number 66 tank and friendly forces defended the dawn. The 24th Air Force Regiment, which was originally responsible for the main attack mission. Cheonglin and Taihu Mountain need to advance quickly to cut off the connection between the east and west sides of Kinmen. But as the sun rises on the 24th, they understand that this goal is no longer achievable. The troops of the 3rd Tank Company area, also in the Guningtou mountain area, withstood the communist attack. The performance of these light tanks can be said to be one man's best. No one can open it. The 1st Battalion of the 3rd Tank Regiment also won its first meritorious service in this battle. Named the hero of Jinmen by his superiors. But the battle is not over yet. The 253rd Regiment of the Communist Army responsible for the main attack on Kinmen County, and the 251st Regiment responsible for assisting. The combat power is relatively well preserved. On the morning of the 25th, captured the Baishan area of Guningtou Peninsula, and established a command post. However, due to low tide, the landing ships were all stranded on the beach, unable to return to Xiamen as originally planned. Pick up and drop off the 2nd Attack Echelon, the National Army's minesweeping boat 202 and the gunboat on the south coast, arriving at the battlefield around 3 o'clock on the 25th. Then violently bombarded the stranded Air Force ships and troops. At dawn, the medium bomber group of the National Army and the National Wing take off immediately. Join the ship bombing operation. All the ships of the 1st echelon of the Air Force were destroyed that morning. On the other side, Zhong Xianwen, commander of the 82nd Air Force Division, commanded the operation. See this situation. I was so angry that I fainted in the command post. In order to send the 2nd echelon up, the 10th Corps of the Kinmen Communist Army had to urgently collect the ferry. But Route 25 all day. Only one ship capable of carrying 4 companies of troops will be accepted. Actually, from an outsider's perspective, at this point in the battle, the defeat is irreversible. The Communist Army does not distinguish between high-ranking officials. He also believed that the disparity in strength between the enemy and our forces was too great. Adding fuel tactics can only increase unnecessary casualties. But the Commander-in-Chief Yi Fei still doesn't give up. On the one hand, Liu Biyu, the 24th Regiment, who was beaten up in Longkou, moved closer to Baishan. On the one hand, 4 companies of the 26th Regiment of the reserve team were dispatched, crossing the sea by boat. Make a last-ditch effort. According to communist soldiers. Sun Yunxiu, leader of the 246th Regiment. Before setting off, I was already prepared to die. In his suicide note, he specifically asked his wife to remarry. I hope my parents won't stop me. The other soldiers followed suit. Leave personal belongings behind. Ask the troops to hand it over to their relatives. The next night the 2nd echelon was forced to cross the sea. However, due to the strong wind and waves and the blockade by Air Force ships, the fleet was blown away. In the end, only 4 platoons landed on the beach. Little impact on the battle situation. The fighting continues on the 26th. But most of the soldiers deserve credit. It has been less than 1 centimeter for 2 consecutive weeks. Hungry, thirsty and sad. Originally they planned to take the mass line, borrow food from fellow villagers. However, according to records, the folk customs in Kinmen at that time were quite tough. When the National Army plane attacks, the villagers gathered on the nearby hilltop to watch the excitement. Beidang bomb hits target. The villagers cheered loudly. Whenever the communist troops were captured by the National Army, everyone would shout and beat them. Although the battle along this road is still going on, but the Communist Army's front is constantly shrinking. This evening, only the Beishan area near Guningtou remains. There is organized resistance. Daybreak on the 27th. The 1st Unit of the National Army launch a general attack on the Air Force's last position. Tank number 66 has been repaired at this time, as armored forces join stormtroopers. The fleet is arriving in the waters north of Guningtou. Use arrow artillery to bombard blind spots that cannot be covered by ground artillery fire. Air Force fighter planes also joined in and strafed the enemy at low altitudes. The remnants of the Communist Army ran out of ammunition and food and fled towards the coast. But because the ship was destroyed, they had to surrender collectively. There are more and more of them, and their tanks are also dispatched. You are shaken, combatant. The battle has basically ended here. Since then, although sporadic fighting broke out in some areas, but they don't care about what happens next. The most exaggerated one is Shubo, commander of the 253rd Regiment. He took advantage of the chaos to break through to the east of Kinmen on the 26th. Since then, he has been hiding in God. He was not captured until January 1950. No doubt. The Battle of Guningtou ended with the complete victory of the National Army. A total of 5,175 communist soldiers were captured, and 3,873 enemy soldiers were killed. Only 2,437 of its own people perished in the fire pool. 3,700 injured. The reasons for the failure of the Communist Army in this battle are very obvious. Good time, place and people. He doesn't occupy any of them. There are two main points in the two phases of landing operations. The first is to be able to create enough trees to break through the enemy's defense line and develop abundant power for all living beings. The second is to be able to establish a solid beachhead as soon as possible. But he failed to do both of these things. So why did the National Army, which had been defeated again and again, win? Counterlanding operations are essentially gestures. But in combat operations, we must take the offensive. Because only by means of attack, in order to destroy the landing enemies, achieve the purpose of defense. At this time, all the national troops defending the island adopted gestures to passively fight. During the Battle of Guningtou, the National Army failed to defend and attacked in the snow. Even attacking against each other will eventually lead to victory. The war snake troops on the island played a key role, taking full advantage of mobile firepower. Killed the Air Force's attempt to break through to all living beings. From a global perspective, the Battle of Guningtou was small in scale. But the historical impact is not small. Chinese People's Liberation Army Air Force General Liu Yazhou once commented, "Without the Battle of Kinmen, there is no Taiwan today." And the National Army also has a great victory. Preservation of the Taiwan Penghu Golden Horse. But objectively speaking, even when the Communist Army captured Kinmen, it is also possible to attack Taiwan in a short period of time. Ship training, weapons and logistics. I can't even keep up with it. Even if you try hard, you will definitely be defeated. Chiang Kai-shek in 195. After losing one river and 3 islands, it was decided not to disperse the troops and garrison the islands along the coast of Zhejiang, thereby strengthening the defense of Kinmen Feather Horse Organization and the signing of the Sino-US Mutual Defense Treaty. And US President Eisenhower promised to never cut ties with Taiwan's military personnel. This is the reason why it can confront the mainland for a long time. Certainly. These are all summaries and analyses that people conduct after the fact. If we were standing on the Kinmen Beach in October 1949, maybe the views will be different. The Battle of Guningtou was essentially about exchanging victory for time. Exchange victory for confidence. He helped Taiwan survive until the outbreak of the Korean War. It took until the US policy toward China changed. Finally, there is something I want to say. War Technology Series has been updated for nearly 2 years. But I have never talked about East Asia. Especially the content related to China has not been mentioned. This is not because the historical data are not detailed enough. But precisely because of this, there are different interpretations. If you like it, please leave your thoughts. Maybe we can continue to arrange it in the future.